doesn't want to hurt me. What does it want? Just to mess with me. Why?
Does it want me to leave?
Am I in its territory? But how can one thing have territory that expands over 100 miles? I thought back on Kara's words. I wish she had given me her phone number instead of the other way around. I needed help. I had no idea what was going on. I guess I could call my parents, or one of the trail hounds, but they'd probably just think I was crazy and ask me to come home. I laid awake until the sun came up. I took off the window.
That might not be a bad idea. Just saying on me.
I took off the window shades one by one, intensely studying my surroundings. If something was out there, following me, unless it was fucking invisible, I would see it. It's a desert. There aren't trees to hide behind. But I saw nothing. I really had to grab my boots. Everything looked normal outside. I took deep breaths.
I counted to 3, then threw the back doors open.
I reached down to grab my boots. One of each was gone. What? One of my boots, and one of my dad's boots, was totally gone. I looked around, thinking maybe they'd just been moved, like the night before, but I didn't see them anywhere. I had another pair of shoes, some sneakers, which I threw on instead, leaving the pairless shoes in the back under my cot. If I got out and looked, maybe I could find the other two, but that was a risk I wasn't willing to take.
I could buy new boots.
I drove away, hands gripping the steering wheel, knuckles turning white. I stopped for coffee to combat my exhaustion, then tried to figure out what to do with myself. I was too on edge to really enjoy any of the things I was planning to see that day. But after my coffee, my head cleared a bit, and I remembered Kara pleading with me to stay at the hostel instead of in my car. That was the problem, I realized.
Whatever it was, it wanted me alone in my van.
I decided to stay at a hotel that night, no matter how expensive. With a plan, I felt much better, and though I was running on only a handful of hours of sleep, I managed to have a pretty good day. I continued to slowly snake west, visiting a national monument, a tourist trap that claimed to have real alien remains, and finally reaching the part of Arizona where saguaro cactuses grow. I never knew a cactus could tower above me, could live for hundreds of years. The beauty of the saguaros reminded me why I went on this trip in the first place, to experience new and incredible things, to help me feel at peace. With newfound clarity, around 7 p.m., I began looking for a nearby hotel. I spotted La Quinta off the interstate, and decided it would do just fine. A nice-looking lady with her hair in a high bun was manning the desk. I asked if they had any available rooms. "Let me find you something," she said with a smile. "Any specific requests?" "Just a standard room, whatever's cheapest," I replied. "How many nights?" "Just one." She nodded. "Hopefully you can get some good sleep." Did I look that bad? So wrecked that she had to comment on it. "I've been sleeping in my van the past couple of nights," I explained. "It's been a little rough." I saw her expression change, just barely. Her eyebrow dropped a centimeter, her lips tightened.
"In your van?"
"Around here." I shifted uncomfortably. "Further east, more towards New Mexico. Just off dirt roads, that kind of thing." Her smile dropped altogether. "Get out." "What?"
"Out. Now."
I was astonished.
Like, could you imagine that? Just be like, "Yeah, no, you gotta leave. Sorry, no, you just broke national law."
"Excuse me. We don't have a room for you. Leave. Keep driving." I felt tears prick the back of my eyes. "Please, I need somewhere to stay, charge me anything you want." She leaned over the counter, speaking to me with quiet intensity.
"Listen, I'm sorry, but I can't have that here."
"I just can't."
"Get out."
"I don't know what you're talking about." Now she was getting upset. "Don't lie to me. We both know why you haven't been sleeping. I'm not letting you bring that to my hotel. Get out." I tried to put on my sweetest, most polite voice.
"I'm not trying to bring you anything but business, Mom, I promise."
She shook her head. "It doesn't matter if you try or not. I can see it now. Its mark is all over you. If you stay here, it'll come. And I'm not letting that happen. One of them here, that's the last thing this town needs." "What is it?" I desperately whispered. "We shouldn't be talking about it," she bluntly replied.
"Now get out."
"Keep driving. Leave the desert." "I can't."
"I can't keep driving, I'm too exhausted."
"You can, and you will. Now get out before I call security." There was no use in arguing any further. Just like Kara, she wouldn't talk about it. I drove around for hours, stopping at every hotel and motel, regardless of cost or how shitty it looked. Nobody would give me a room. Some wouldn't even let me through the front door. I guessed that Miss La Quinta had called around with a description of me.
I felt cursed.
Outcast from society. I couldn't get a hotel room, I couldn't keep my eyes open long enough to drive all the way out of the desert. It was hundreds of miles in every direction. In a last resort, I pulled into some dirt right off of the interstate to try and sleep. My hope was that, since I was right off the road, where people were constantly driving by, the thing might leave me alone. I didn't put my boots out. I just put in my window shades and lay down. In the back of my mind, I knew this was a shitty idea. Even if the thing didn't get me, I could get in trouble with the police for sleeping in my car on a random pull-off. You're not really technically supposed to sleep in your car on public property, the exception being rest stops, and even then it varies from state to state.
Maybe I'd get arrested and could sleep the night in jail.
The thought was actually a little comforting, which would have been funny if it wasn't so sad. I also worried about not being able to sleep due to constant traffic noise, but when it started to get late, and it approached 24 hours since I last slept, the cars passing were a gentle lullaby that lured me to dreamland. It didn't last. Of course not. It couldn't be that easy. When I woke up, I first noticed that it was silent outside. No road noise. I guess even the interstate doesn't have very much traffic when it gets to be late enough. And then, I heard them. Those stupid fucking footsteps I had gotten so used to listening for. I immediately reached for the hatchet I kept under the passenger seat, clutching it to my chest. I didn't give a fuck anymore. I was ready to kill this thing for some fucking sleep. I listened as the steps circled the car 3 times. On the second time around, it began singing my song. A chill went down my spine as I realized it was better. The thing singing was getting better. It was still clearly not human, but it was a better imitation. What the fuck? I remembered Kara's words, out here, things are newer. Constantly changing. Shifting. Learning. I waited for the thumping to come. By now I knew the pattern. It was watching me. Following me. Listening to me. And copying me. It wanted a reaction. I wouldn't give it that. Once the thumping started, once it was all around me, and I had no chance of missing, I'd jump out with the hatchet. I don't give a shit what this thing was, it couldn't follow me if I cut it in half. It kept circling. I waited. All at once, I heard the screech of metal as the thing began pushing my van. I fell off my cot to the van floor. That was not what I fucking expected. And worse, the van actually fucking moved. Somehow, this thing had gone from weakly thumping against Aggie's side, giving me a little scare, to being able to fucking shove a 5,000-pound van across sand. What the actual fuck was this thing? How was it getting stronger? Exclamation mark. Suddenly, I realized that I had nothing outside, no boots, nothing to protect. The interstate was still close. If I jumped into the driver's seat now, I could floor it. I hadn't gotten much sleep, but I'd gotten enough. I'd drive all the way to California, I'd watch the sunrise from the beach, I'd wake up from this nightmare. Frantically, I began searching for the keys. I kept them on a hook above the cot for easy access, but in the first big shove, they'd fallen somewhere. I dug through the pile of blankets on my cot, then began clawing around under the bed, waiting to feel the cold metal of Aggie's key. Outside, the noise of the van being shoved further out into the desert was deafening. Motionless rubber tires being forced to carve through sand made a loud, sickening crunch. I wondered how fast we were moving, how far away I was getting from the interstate, my salvation, my way out. And as I searched, even over the noise, I swear, I heard the fucking thing trying to talk.
www.witist. It said, sounding like 2 voices of opposite pitches trying to speak in unison, sounding wheezy, sounding choked, sounding distinctly unhuman.
WHATEISIT. It repeated, the words getting more distinct. I realized it was imitating me, trying to say what I'd said to the hotel receptionist earlier. It could hear me, even then. How closely had it been following me? I began to cry, choked by sobs, struggling to find my keys, now struggling to even see through my tears. Hearing me cry, the thing stopped its sick imitation and started up with its horrific laugh, all around me, just as loud as the shoving. And then, sitting on my van floor, sure I was doomed, that this thing was going to take me out into the desert and eat me and assume my identity, I remembered, I left the keys in the ignition. I wanted to be able to hop up there and look like I was just taking a quick break from driving in case the cops showed up and caught me sleeping in my van in a non-rest area. Holy fucking shit. The world snapped back into focus. I threw myself into the front seat, turning the key. The engine sputtered. Come on. The thing outside was still laughing and pushing. I turned the key again. The engine sputtered. Aggie, please, for fuck's sake. I turned the key. The engine came to life. I gasped a sigh of frantic relief. I pressed the gas, and heard my wheels turning in the sand, but I didn't move. The thing was holding the van in a monstrously strong grip. Somehow, though I put the pedal to the floor, it was able to hold me back. So, in an act of sheer desperation, I threw the van in reverse. As I floored it backwards, I heard tires squelching across flesh, and a broken, wheezy, wet scream. I breathed hard for a moment. The van was motionless, engine still running. To get back on the interstate, I had to rip off my window shade. I had to look. I couldn't hesitate for long, or it might move again. It might grab me. In one fluid motion, I yanked my black cardboard shade from the windshield with my right hand while turning on my lights with the left. I saw it, laying there in the sand in front of me. I wish I could describe it to you in a way that makes any sense at all. It had skin that was a warped mixture of gray and tan, with thin patches of disgusting fur, like an animal with mange. It had antlers, sharp antlers, like a deer, but they stuck out of the sides of the head, not on top. It didn't have ears. It had holes where ears might be gaping black holes. Some blood seeped out of it, presumably from me running it over. It had a little tail.
Long, thin arms with fingers that appeared to have 3 or 4 joints each. They were bent in so many places. It was huge.
And this is what upset me the most: its shape was not constant. As it lay there, twitching, trying to get up, sometimes, as it pulled, its torso would stretch longer. Or it would expand wider, like it was a liquid, like it was spilling out of its own horrific and diseased skin. I only looked for a moment, but I can still see it every time I blink. I have a photographic memory for this one specific moment of my life. On its left foot it wore my father's boot. On its right foot, it wore mine. I didn't stay to watch it stand. I took a sharp left and drove through the sand, quickly but carefully, making sure not to run down any saguaros on my quest to get back to the interstate. I don't know if I went the fastest way, because I wasn't sure what I was doing or which direction I'd been pushed, but it took me almost 20 minutes to find a road again, despite the fact that I was pushing 80 miles per hour. That thing had pushed me into the middle of fucking nowhere in a matter of minutes. I drove all the way to California. I didn't make it to the beach by sunrise. The thing assaulted me around 2 a.m. and it was 7 hours out of the desert.
But when I began to see palm trees, I cried again, heavy with exhaustion and terror and relief.
I must have looked like a lunatic, standing knee-deep in the ocean, wailing. I was planning on going to a car wash next, but when I examined Aggie, she was spotless, like the thing had called its blood back to its body, somehow.
I shivered at the thought.
I had a few more issues on my cross-country solo trip, but nothing like that. I haven't experienced anything like that since, and I hope I never will. I did get a call from Kara, though. She apologized for taking so long to call me, expressing that her old traveling partner had taken her cell phone when he abandoned her in Fort Collins, and she was just finally able to buy a new one. We caught up.
She let me tell her about the thing. I know she thought it was bad luck to talk about, but I also knew she was the only person who would ever believe me.
She said she was sorry I'd been through all that, and earnestly promised to see me the next time she was around the Great Smoky Mountains.
I said I'd do the same if I was ever around Albuquerque.
She grew very serious. That's not a good idea, Joanne. What? Aren't you still there? Did you have a fight with Jess? No, I'm still here.
But you shouldn't come back.
Ever. A chill went through me. Oh. Don't worry, Joanne, nothing is going to happen to you, as long as you stay away. Drive up the coast. Oregon is beautiful this time of year. You can go east from there, yeah. I grew a little sad, thinking of the gorgeous saguaros, the colorful mesas, things I barely got to appreciate because I was so consumed with fear during my time in New Mexico and Arizona. I can't believe I can never go back. Kara was quiet for a moment, then spoke with intensity. Let me put it this way, Joanne. It lives for a lot longer than you do. It's always learning. And it never forgets a scent. I did end up going the long way around. I got to see Yellowstone, Mount Rushmore, all kinds of stuff I'd only seen in movies. I really did find myself, in a way. I learned what I'm capable of. I learned to put the bad memories behind me, to make room for better ones. I met lots more people like Kara, people who I came to call lifelong friends, much like the trail hounds. I laughed, I cried, I took a million photos and sent them to everyone I knew. I think everyone should take a solo trip at least once in their life.
It's the first time I really felt like my own person, totally separate from my family, my history, my friends.
Just stay away from the desert. Or, if you really want to see it and it is beautiful, listen to the locals. Stay in a hostel, motel, hotel, with a friend, whatever you prefer. Just don't sleep out there in your van. And if you do,
and you see a thing I still have nightmares about, running around wearing 2 mismatched boots.
Please don't tell me about it.
What a wild story. It's hard to say if that was actually true or not. But I mean, that was wild. I don't know what it would have been though. Might have to do some research, see if anybody else has run into anything like this. But that's wild, because like my parents go down to Arizona all the time. So I wonder if they've heard stories about it, things that people don't talk about. Oh, well. Well, thank you guys for checking it out. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm sorry it took so long. It was a long story. But yeah, I hope you guys have a great day.